So people still don't understand why NATO is not helping Ukraine. As you guys can see, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine is happening. Ukraine's capital is expected to be captured by the Russians in the coming days. That's according to high-up U.S. intelligence. But NATO puts out this tweet: "We are deploying elements of NATO response force. Here are 5 things you need to know." And there's a bunch of replies of people saying you need to help Ukraine. Right now, NATO cannot do a thing. They're going to tweet out stuff. They're going to make it seem all happy, whatever. But there's really nothing that NATO can do. Ukraine is not part of NATO. They actually... Let me see if I can find this screenshot I took, and I'll put it up on the screen. This is from the Ukrainian President Zelensky. "Today, I asked the 27 leaders of Europe whether Ukraine will be in NATO. I asked directly, everyone is afraid, does not answer." So they're not going to be, that's not how it works. You can't be in NATO once your country gets invaded. And Putin is clearly playing the long game. You know, back in 2008, he does something. 2014, he annexes. And now, this is kind of the first major step for him, the actual invasion of the Ukraine. The only way this escalates is if NATO responds right now. Putin and the Russians are not dumb enough to invade further west. I feel like that's a lot of, irrational, it is a normal fare if they invade and take over Ukraine that they're going to keep going. They simply don't have the overall army to do it. There's been some mix-up, some people saying that Ukraine is, halting a lot of Russian advances. I think it's going to be very hard to really follow stuff like that, because I think a lot of the kind of like when Ukraine shoots down a plane, that's going to get more often reported than when Russia invades and takes over a city, just based off the fact that most people in the world and on social media are rooting for Ukraine. So whenever Ukraine does something good, it's going to be disproportionately showed like, oh, Ukraine's actually winning, when in reality, I think people have to understand that Russia will take their capital in the coming days. You just got to understand it. And NATO can't do a thing about it, because NATO knows if they intervene, that's basically a trigger warning, and basically will allow Putin to potentially launch nuclear bombs against NATO countries. And we remember Putin saying when they started this so-called military operation into Ukraine, saying that if anyone interfered with it, they would be met with potential nuclear bombs, basically threatening nuclear warfare against the West if they interfered with this takeover of Ukraine. The Russians understand that, Ukraine is not a part of NATO. They know NATO is in an extremely awkward situation, and the best way to de-escalate this situation, from NATO's perspective, is to, just hit Russia with a ton of sanctions, try and cripple their economy. Obviously, those sanctions take months and months to actually be implemented. It's not just like, oh, you hit them with sanctions and they're done and their entire economy wipes out. That's not what happens. It's going to take time. And Russia, they are losing attack helicopters. They are having planes get shot down. So this is the rarest thing. We're literally dealing with an invasion in the 21st century with social media. This is the first major wartime event where we have full-fledged social media. Everyone's got a camera with, an HD camera on it where they can flip it out and record in 3 seconds a video of a Russian tank running over a Ukrainian citizen while the Ukrainian citizen is driving. Oh my god, like, this is the thing you were going to see. It's so crazy to see this stuff actually happen. This is really the first major conflict with social media. And Kyiv mayor says situation is threatening with Russian troops close to the capital. This night and morning will be very difficult. Ukraine reports over 1,000 Russian soldiers killed on invasion second day. Ukraine armed forces allege that is the largest number of casualties in conflict ever sustained by Russia in one day. That doesn't seem correct. I'm guessing Germany had more Russian casualties. Ukraine's president says 130 people died in the first day of conflict and that his country has been left alone to fight against Russia. That obviously has to do with NATO not doing much in terms of manpower. NATO, all the NATO countries are just sanctioning Russia. They do not want to get involved right now because this is not a NATO country. and Russia wants to be on the border with the NATO country. I think they want to have more influence. Putin wants more influence on the West, and this is his way of doing it. And, you know, the thing is, you want to de-escalate this situation as fast as possible. And really, unfortunately, the only way to de-escalate it is to just not do anything, stand back, not do anything. NATO would be well within their rights, you would think, just on a human level, right? Russia's the aggressor. They're the one invading. And the one thing surprised me with Russia was just the lack of diplomacy they had. I mean, there's not even a legitimate excuse to invade Ukraine. I think they said, you know, to denazify it, like... you'd think they would at least stage some sort of terrorist attack on Moscow or something to give them an excuse to invade Ukraine. Even if it was a sham, you could at least say that. But it's an obvious, just full-fledged invasion just because they want to. Just because they want more power in the Western world. They want to be bordered with a NATO country. And that's really their... And their excuse is that... their excuse is that they want to, you know... take all the Nazis out of Ukraine, which is just basically the equivalent of studying for a test for 3 minutes and then trying to get questions right. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You just got to come up with something. Like, why are we invading this? Well, there's Nazis there. We got to take them out. Like, you'd think they would have came up with something better. But alas, we will continue to track this invasion. And the big news today was it looks like the capital, according to U.S. intelligence, again, will fall within the coming days. Just be prepared for that. I know a lot of people are rooting for Ukraine in this event. At least a lot of people on social media are. And personally, I don't have a side. I mean, you know, it is what it is. I just want to report on it. So they are going to enclose Kyiv and take it over due to just their military being stronger. I'm just letting you guys know, so just be prepared for that. You guys can see the capital right here. Russian troops moving towards it, and we expect them to overtake it due to their military. Just, you know, a lot of military might, a lot of manpower. Ukraine putting up a very good fight, though. Definitely have to give them credits. So, guys, make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.